For decades, railroad workers at Chicago Union Station have been operating in a covered environment where diesel exhaust and other industrial chemicals can build up over time. That exposure may be linked to serious health conditions, including lung disease, blood disorders, and certain cancers. In this video, we'll break down what chemicals workers may have been exposed to, who is most at risk, and what legal options may be available. If you or a loved one worked at Union Station and have subsequently been diagnosed with cancer or other serious injuries, contact Gianaris Trial Lawyers for a free, no-obligation consultation. Were you exposed to toxic chemicals at Chicago Union Station? Chicago Union Station sits at the center of the regional rail network, connecting Amtrak and Metra lines that move tens of thousands of passengers through the Chicago rail yard and terminal complex every day. The station's role as a major transportation hub means trains are constantly arriving, idling, and departing, creating an environment where exhaust, fumes, and other byproducts of rail operations can accumulate. Unlike open rail yards, Chicago Union Station is a covered, semi-enclosed terminal where diesel exhaust can become trapped and build up over time. Chicago Union Station is one of the busiest rail hubs in the country, and for many travelers and workers, that has meant long shifts in confined, poorly ventilated spaces where diesel exhaust and other chemicals can build up. Testing has shown elevated levels of diesel particulates in and around the station, raising concerns about long-term health risks for workers exposed in these environments. When employers fail to provide proper ventilation or protection, those conditions can become the basis for legal claims under FELA. Documented air quality problems at Chicago Union Station. Air quality concerns at Chicago Union Station are not theoretical. They've been measured and documented over time. Studies have found that fine particulate levels on platforms are significantly higher than nearby street levels, with spikes occurring when multiple diesel locomotives are present. Some testing has shown diesel soot levels many times higher than typical urban environments, highlighting how quickly pollution can build up inside the station. Because these particles can reach deep into the lungs and bloodstream, long-term exposure for workers raises serious health concerns. Key findings include PM 2.5 levels on platforms measured 23% to 96% higher than nearby street levels. Higher pollution concentrations near locomotives and on certain platforms. Short-term spikes during busy periods with multiple diesel engines. Diesel soot levels recorded at more than 20 times higher than typical levels in major cities. Types of toxic exposures at Chicago Union Station. Workers can face multiple types of toxic exposure, often during routine daily work. While diesel exhaust is the primary concern, individuals may have also been exposed to asbestos, chemical cleaners, degreasers, and welding fumes over time. Common types of toxic exposure at or connected to Chicago Union Station include diesel exhaust from idling locomotives on covered platforms and in confined areas, soot and fine particulate matter drawn into passenger cars and workspaces, asbestos from older brake components, insulation, and building materials, solvents, degreasers, and industrial cleaning chemicals used on equipment and in station areas, welding fumes and metal dust for machinists, pipe fitters, and repair crews working on trains and infrastructure, silica dust and creosote for maintenance of way and track workers serving the lines that feed into the station. Jobs most likely to involve exposure at Union Station. While travelers and community members may have also been exposed to these dangerous chemicals, workers generally face the biggest risks. Many Union Station workers spend years in roles that place them near diesel exhaust, confined airspaces, and industrial materials. Exposure isn't limited to one job. It often depends on how much time was spent around active trains, enclosed platforms, and poorly ventilated areas over the course of a career. Jobs and work histories at or tied to Union Station that may involve significant exposure include conductors and assistant conductors who walk platforms and ride in passenger cars behind diesel locomotives, locomotive engineers who spend entire shifts in cabs and on trains operating in and out of the covered terminal, train attendants, car cleaners, and onboard service staff who work in passenger cars where diesel exhaust and soot can be drawn in and held. ticket agents and gate staff whose booths and workstations sit near platform entrances and shared ventilation zones. Baggage handlers and red caps who move luggage on and off trains in areas with concentrated diesel exhaust. Carmen, machinists, pipe fitters, and electricians who inspect, repair, and service cars and equipment connected to Union Station operations. Trackmen, bridge and building workers, and maintenance of way crews who handle ballast, treated timbers, and other materials involving silica and creosote. Supervisors and dispatch or operations staff who routinely walk platforms, shops, or tunnels as part of their duties. Cancers and diseases linked to railroad diesel exposure. Long-term diesel exposure in railroad work has been most strongly linked to lung cancer, especially for workers in enclosed or poorly ventilated environments. Research has also connected exposure to COPD, emphysema, and other forms of permanent lung damage. In many cases, additional exposures such as asbestos, silica, solvents, and creosote may contribute to other serious illnesses and cancers over time. Cancers and diseases commonly reported in railroad diesel exposure and co-exposure cases include lung cancer, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, stomach or colorectal cancer, esophageal and throat cancers, leukemia and certain lymphomas, multiple myeloma and other blood or bone marrow disorders, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and emphysema, interstitial lung disease and pulmonary fibrosis, chronic bronchitis and other long-term respiratory problems. How FELA applies to Chicago Union Station cases. FELA is a federal law that allows railroad workers to seek compensation when their employer's negligence contributed to an injury or illness. Unlike standard workers' comp, FELA can cover full damages, including lost wages, pain and suffering, and future earnings. For Union Station cases, claims often focus on whether railroads failed to provide a safe work environment despite known risks from diesel exhaust and other toxic exposures. These claims typically must be filed within 3 years of when the illness was discovered to be work-related, making timing especially important in cancer and long-term exposure cases. What about passengers and nearby community members? Exposure risks aren't limited to railroad workers. People who spent significant time in or around Chicago Union Station, including daily commuters and local residents, may also have been exposed to diesel exhaust and other pollutants over long periods. The key factor is frequency and duration of exposure. For example, someone who commuted through Union Station every day for many years may face a much different level of risk than someone who passed through occasionally. Because these cases are highly fact-specific, the best way to understand your situation is to speak with an experienced attorney. Gianaris Trial Lawyers offers free consultations to help evaluate whether your exposure history may support a potential claim. Building a Chicago Union Station exposure case. Building a case starts with showing where you worked, what you were exposed to, and how often. Attorneys compare your work history with known conditions at Union Station, including diesel exhaust levels and safety practices, and then connect that exposure to your diagnosis using medical records, work records, and expert analysis. If successful, an FELA claim may allow recovery for medical expenses and ongoing treatment, lost wages and reduced future earning capacity, pain and suffering, emotional distress, wrongful death damages for surviving family members, compensation for other economic and non-economic damages. The statute of limitations limits the time that you have to file a claim after your injury, so it is best to act as soon as possible. Gianaris Trial Lawyers, lawyers for toxic exposure at Chicago Union Station. Gianaris Trial Lawyers is actively reviewing potential chemical exposure cases involving long-term exposure at or around Chicago Union Station. Current and former Amtrak, Metra, and other railroad industry employees who spent time in the Union Station environment and were subsequently diagnosed with cancer or other serious injuries may qualify for legal action. Contact Gianaris Trial Lawyers for a free, no-obligation consultation or visit lawforpeople.com and use our chatbot for a free consultation. There is no obligation to move forward, and speaking with a lawyer can help you understand your options for seeking accountability and potential compensation.